Hey, hockey fans, welcome to the Across the Pond Hockey Podcast YouTube channel. If it's your first time here and you'd like to support us, please hit that subscribe button and that like button. It goes a long way in helping us develop the program. Before we get to tonight's episode, I have to take a minute to thank our wonderful sponsors, starting with the China Hockey Group. The China Hockey Group is a family-oriented group of ice hockey leagues, training programs, and community initiatives geared towards developing hockey in Southeast Asia. From their incredible Junior Tigers program all the way up to the CIHL, which is Hong Kong's elite full-contact ice hockey league, they have a program suitable for players of all ages and abilities. You can also stop by the Warrior Bauer Hockey Shop in Central for all your equipment needs and skate sharpening. Check out their website for more information at ChinaHockeyGroup.com. That's ChinaHockeyGroup.com. Next, we have our friends at Accessory House Global. If you're like me and your headphones look like this, it's time to head to AccessoryHouseGlobal.com for any accessories you need for your headphones. From cables to carrying cases to new ear pads, they carry products for all the biggest brands. Head to their website at AccessoryHouseGlobal.com. Use the promo code ATP20 for 20% off your purchase. That's AccessoryHouseGlobal.com. Next, we have our pals over at Wheel Hub Asia. These guys are committed to building community and bringing accessibility to inline hockey players across Southeast Asia. They're heading into the year 2 of Hong Kong's newest inline league, 3 Inline. You can head to their website for all of your inline hockey needs at wheelhubasia.com. Enter discount code ATP10 for 10% off your purchase. That's wheelhubasia.com. Next, we have our friends at Yardley Brothers Craft Brewery. Folks, if you're a craft brew fan and you're in Hong Kong, then you absolutely have to check out Yardley Brothers' incredible selection of award-winning brews. You can head to the Beer Shack on Llama Island or the Yardley Brothers Cafe and Bistro at 62 Peel Street in Central. If you can't get out of the house, no problem. Just head to their website, yardleybrothers.hk, and you can get their delicious products delivered right to your door. That's yardleybrothers.hk. Last but not least, a huge thank you to Mr. Paul MacLean at Sunset Studio in Kennedy Town for always making the podcast sound great. If you're looking for a place to jam with your band or record a new song, check them out on Instagram at sunset_studio_HK. That's sunset_studio_HK. Folks, the websites and description will be in the description. All the discount codes will be there for you. Please check them out and support our wonderful sponsors. Hey folks, welcome back to season 5 of the Across the Pond Hockey Podcast. I'm so excited today to have a really special Canadian guest on the show. But before we get to that, I do want to give a couple shout outs. The first one is Mr. Paul MacLean, the pride of Glace Bay, the man who does all the work behind the scenes for me. I want to thank you for 4 amazing years so far, and looking forward to working with you again this year. And Mrs. Letitia Bishop, who is my YouTube video editor. Thank you so much, Letitia, for all your hard work, and looking forward to another great season. So that being said, here we are in season 5. Fans, welcome back to the show. And my very special guest today was born in Montreal and grew up in Nova Scotia. She was an aspiring opera singer who ended up becoming a multi-talented Canadian entertainer. From fronting Canadian rock band Joydrop to co-hosting Rogers Hometown Hockey with the legendary Ron MacLean. And she currently finds herself working with the San Jose Sharks as a content creator, podcaster, on-air specialist, analyst. Please welcome to the podcast, Mrs. Tara Slone. Tara, sorry,
Hey.
I gotta get it right, Tara.
Oh,
sorry.
that's it. You know what? I grew up in Nova Scotia. Most Nova Scotians say Tara, so I don't take offense or umbrage. Whatever. Tara. It's all
I'll
good.
do my best to get it right before the end of this episode. So
Okay.
Tara, you were born in Montreal. Were your parents French? Either of them?
No, not francophone. No, my
No.
mom, her parents came over. My grandfather was in banking, and he came over from Great Britain. He was Scottish, and then my granny
Yeah.
was English. My dad is a Montreal Jew, so his parents were actually born in Montreal. So both Anglophones,
Yeah.
but that really is the root of my hockey fandom because my dad specifically grew up watching the Habs. So
Yeah.
that's
Well,
where that
good.
came from.
That's awesome. I'm a Habs fan as well. Hockey fan number one, but Habs fan number two. Um, so how old were you when you moved to Nova Scotia?
I was six.
Okay.
I was
And
6 years
was it
old.
Halifax?
No, I first moved to Wolfville.
Okay.
My stepfather worked at Acadia University, so we were in
Hmm.
Wolfville. And then I did junior high and high school in Halifax. So went to Gorsebrook for those out there who might know Gorsebrook, and then QEH, rest in peace.
Yeah, yes, it's gone now. That's right.
It's
The
gone, yeah.
Goresbrook. I did my first ever open mic at the Goresbrook, to be honest. So I did my
No
undergrad at
way.
SMU. Yeah.
Oh
So
yeah.
it was quite a little spot, and SMU is a great university as well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I love Halifax, and I go as much as I can, and I dream of moving back one day.
Yeah. So Tara, let's get right to it. I mean, you have so many talents. You're so versatile, and it was really shocking when I first heard that you started out as an aspiring opera singer. Did that come from someone in your family, or where did that start?
Not classical music specifically. My dad grew up playing in bands, and he still has a
Yeah.
studio in his house and a great
Okay.
guitar collection, and he still
Hmm.
sings and plays. But classical music was something that I think, I think my mom played it around the house, but I just loved it. And I think for me, it was really when I first joined a choir somewhere in elementary school, the whole thing really resonated with me, and I had a natural gift, I guess, in that particular part of my voice. For
Hmm.
the longest time, I didn't think I could sing rock music. I only knew I had this head voice.
Right.
But yeah, I loved classical music. I loved harmonies. I even joined a church choir, and I'm
Yeah.
not Christian. Just so I could sing, just so I
Yeah.
could sing with a choir. So yeah, I just loved it. Ultimately, I did start at Dalhousie University and realized at that point I just did not have the discipline. It's a really you really have to be committed to go into any form of
Yeah.
classical music.
Yeah, but I mean, it at least got your you got your feet wet, like being in front of people and proving that you
Mhm.
had a voice and being confident because you show so much confidence when you're on the air. And I wonder if that's where it comes from because you started at such an early age.
Maybe I think it's reps, I do
Yeah.
think the more you do something, and for sure, having started when I was young, doing those Kiwanis festivals and singing
Yeah.
in choirs and doing solos. Um, but it's funny that I exude that because I still battle nerves, to this
Yeah.
day. Um, there's no broadcast I do where I don't have butterflies.
Well, I'm happy to hear that because I feel the same way. And I mean, sometimes, as a singer or as a teacher, doing presentations or whatever it is, there's
Mhm.
always something. Do you have a go-to method to deal with those nerves?
I mean, I've learned certain things I have to do in advance. I actually had a panic attack on live TV when I first started doing live television, and I
Yeah.
was working at a really small station in Toronto, and probably nobody was watching, but I just, I hadn't had enough sleep. I'd had too much coffee. I was frankly hungover.
Yeah.
So I kind of learned what my nervous system could and couldn't take. So there's
Mm,
certain disciplines that I like to have, like being well rested, not
yeah.
having too much caffeine. Things like that are important. But then in the moment, yeah, I mean, I make sure that I take a little bit of time. If I don't have time to like sit down and do a meditation, I'll at least
Yeah.
try to do some deep breathing.
Yeah.
And a psychologist gave me great advice, and he works with hockey players, and it was sing.
Hmm.
So, sometimes I'll just like, sing a few bars of a tune, and that actually kind of just shifts your brain.
Wow. Where does that spiritual part of your life come from and the meditation?
So my parents were hippies, and
Okay.
when they were in their early 20s, they started following a Tibetan lama who had come to the
Wow.
West, who had escaped
Okay.
Tibet, moved to India, and then
Hmm.
subsequently moved to North America. So I grew up in a Buddhist household.
Mm. Okay.
So all four of my parents, they remarried,
Yeah.
were pretty, committed Buddhist practitioners. So that was just part of my life growing up. And in my early 20s, I myself kind of gravitated towards it as a real path.
Wow. It's something that I'm trying to introduce into my own life as well. So maybe I'll have to get back to you on that for some more tips. Um, but we'll leave that for another episode. So Tara, growing up in the Halifax area, and you went to Dalhousie. Well, what age or at what point at Dal did you start thinking, what's my future hold? Where am I going with this?
I honestly don't think that I had that thought. I think it
Okay.
was, I was like, okay, all my friends are having fun and I want to do that too. And everything just, it was actually a real pivotal moment in my life where things just kind of collapsed on themselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, I didn't, I stopped going to class.
Hmm.
I blew it. I totally blew it. And, um, it's something you could regret, but in retrospect, it was a real learning moment or period of time for me.
Yeah.
So I ultimately took some time out of university. I moved to Montreal, got a job at Sam the Record Man in Montreal, where I'd worked there in Halifax all through high school.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
that was my in at Sam's. And then I really had to reassess, like, okay, what am I going to do? I have to take my life here seriously because
Yeah.
I fucked it up.
Hey, it happens. And look where you're at now, so it doesn't even matter. So, Sam the
Yeah.
Record Man, I do want to ask you about Sam the Record Man because record stores are, few and far between now. In fact, I
Mhm.
just not a shameless plug here, but my band, the Young Bucks, we sold our first album in a record store like a month ago
Yay.
in
That's
Halifax.
awesome. All
It's
right.
called
Which record
Taz.
store?
It's called Taz Records.
I know Taz, of course.
Do you? Yeah. So I don't know if
Yeah.
that's the only one left in the city now, but those days have come and gone, of hanging out in record stores and talking to the people who work there, finding new music. Everything's so different now. Like, where do you find music now? How can you compare the past, like when you worked back at Sam the Record Man and your introduction to music to where it's at now?
I feel so lucky that I
Yeah.
found that job. And also, I found it at a time where, I was in high school and it's really easy to get sucked into just high school life and high school
Hmm.
drama. And for me, having Sam the Record Man and the people who worked there and the exposure to music outside of, my peer group, it was huge. It changed everything for me.
Yeah.
So I could not be more grateful for that experience. It really, I mean, it completely informed my musical taste.
Right.
How I find music now, I mean, it's not the same, and it certainly doesn't feel as magical as like
Yeah.
putting on a listening copy and discovering something for the first time. But
Right.
I do make a point of, I subscribe to satellite radio, and I
Hmm.
make a point of listening to new stuff. And honestly, my daughter, who's 14, she'll take over the car stereo, and she plays stuff I've never heard too. So that's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, so I heard the story about how you got the audition for Joydrop, and I'd like for you to share that because it's pretty cool, something that we don't see anymore. For those of you who don't know, Joydrop was a Canadian rock band that Tara was the front woman for. Tell us that story.
Well, everything I'm telling is like these things don't exist anymore.
I know, but that's okay.
There's
We'll
no
get to
more
the
record
current.
stores. Yeah, and this was, I found an ad in the back of a weekly magazine called Now Magazine,
Yeah.
and it said looking for a rock goddess. And I had moved to Toronto after theater school. I was acting for the most part, but really missed music,
Yeah.
and so was looking just for people to play music with. Nothing serious. I don't think I had any aspirations in music. In fact, I don't think I understood that you could kind of do the whole thing. Like, it just didn't
Right.
occur to me. Um, so I went down to a place called Cherry Beach Studios. The band, they were already together, and so they were looking for, the final piece of the puzzle. So met my who became my bandmates, Tony,
Mhm.
Tom, and Thomas. So Tara, I came, and
Yeah. The
um
four T's.
yeah, and it clicked really quickly. And that was God, oh my God, that was like late 1996. And then by August 1997, we had done a demo and we'd gotten a record deal and we're getting ready to do our first album. So it happened pretty quickly, and
Yeah,
another blessing in my life.
I'm sure. But I mean, how did that process go for you as someone? Did you have any experience on a stage besides like doing theater or like singing solos at church, or is this your first time in a club playing in front of drunk people? Like,
No, I had a band in Montreal when I worked at Sam's in Montreal. I joined a
okay,
band.
all right,
That was my first rock band, and we were called Laverne. And I actually think we
okay,
were pretty good. I
yeah,
have some recordings still, and
hmm
I think it stands the test of time. But I didn't. There's no part of me that thought you could really do it and get paid. Like
yeah,
we maybe made beer money, but
yeah,
no. I mean, this was a different league. The aspirations were entirely different.
mm,
The standards were entirely different, and I really did have to, in some ways, my vocal training was, not in some ways, in most ways, my vocal training was key. It got me through touring.
yeah,
Um, but I had to train some things out of me. I had a pretty
mm,
intense vibrato that I
yeah,
had to sort of massage down.
yeah. And what instruments were you playing at the time, or can you play?
I can't fully play anything. I mean, when I write on guitar, so
Right.
I tool
Yeah.
around on guitar.
Yeah.
I can read music, so I can figure out a keyboard.
hmm
But yeah, I can't accompany myself with any degree of proficiency.
When you joined Joydrop, were you writing together as a group, or what was your writing process?
We weren't, and that I regret that, and I think we all do.
Yeah.
I mean, it is maybe one thing that kind of made it interesting, and there are lots of bands that do this. We all
hmm
wrote
Yeah.
ourselves. And so the album was a little bit more of a mosaic,
Mm.
as opposed to a collaboration. There's one song on our first album that I wrote with the guitar player, Thomas.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, we're actually, funny enough, Tony, our drummer, was just visiting me a few months ago in California, and we wrote a song together. And we've only done that a
Oh,
few
wow.
times. So yeah, it's I think it was a bit of a miss, but that was just that's how we were formed. So
Yeah, I'm just always curious about the writing process because I'm in a band where three of us are writing songs and it's just kind of the same thing. We're kind of all doing it separately. It's really difficult to sit down with somebody and, connect your mind to theirs and kind of make a song. It's not as easy as people might think. A-
no, really, it's not. No.
And then do you start with lyrics or do you start with a melody? What's your preference?
Um, I've done both. I
Yeah.
mean, and sometimes they sort of come together, come at the same time. Um, I, at the time, I mean, I certainly kept notes and poems and lyric ideas. I still do, but not nearly as much or as
Yeah.
often. So, if I have kind of a melody or chords, I will draw on something that exists, but it's
Mhm.
just however the feeling hits, really.
At the time. Cool. So also you're when that all started coming to an end, and or actually before we get to that, you first see, your first number one hit, you're on much more music and you're on TV in Canada. Was there a time where you thought like this is it? We're gonna do this, we're gonna be playing stadiums pretty soon. Like what was your thought process?
I don't think so. And I wish we had appreciated it more at the time.
Hmm.
Like, I think that we were always striving for more. And so it didn't let us enjoy things so much in the moment.
Yeah.
Probably, I would say, when we recorded the video, when we shot the video with Tommy Lee in LA, the whole
Hmm.
thing felt so Hollywood that it was
Yeah.
like moments like that we were staying at this like really fancy hotel, and the shoot was just like, when you're waited on hand and foot and you've
Yeah.
got this whole crew, and moments like that kind of were, you're taken aback by them. But in terms of our success, yeah, I just don't think we ever stopped to smell the roses, or not nearly
Hmm.
enough. I don't even think that
Right.
we understood, like when we were nominated for Juno. I don't even think we like really don't think we got it.
No, but looking
No.
back, you can get it now, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
That's a
it's
big
all these
deal.
things are, yeah, yeah, great feathers in our cap. And
Yeah, for sure.
um, just nice to know we had some impact.
Yeah. And that amazing video with Tommy Lee, that must have been quite an experience just hanging out on a couch with him.
It was, to tell the truth, Tommy had at that point already like been in jail. Like
Hmm.
I had a lot of reservations about it.
Yeah.
And I tried to pull the plug.
Oh,
I
wow.
was, yeah, I did. I was completely overruled,
Okay.
and I made the best of it. Like I do think that the sort of morally correct thing to do would have been not to have him.
Okay.
So we and the record company, went the side of like what was gonna work for us, and ultimately, the video really did work for us. And Tommy ended up being a really lovely person, at least to us. I think he's like a giant child. I
Okay.
think he became famous at such a young age,
Hmm.
that he's like a puppy. He just has this like youthful exuberance. He was
Yeah.
really excited about the music. He didn't do it for the money. He did it because he liked the song.
That's really
And
cool.
so it ended up being a really cool experience. But yeah,
Awesome.
probably a lesser known fact is that I tried to kill the whole thing.
Wow. But I mean, you are a pretty strong-willed person. And if somebody was gonna be, you know, doing things the wrong way and following a different moral path than maybe that you have, then you would stand up to that, which just kind of makes you special. So before after that, so Tara, you got into some small time interviewing, your first taste of interviewing people. What was that?
Well, my first taste of interviewing people was actually while I was still in Joydrop. Um,
Okay.
I was doing some things for Michael Landsberg's show Off the Record,
Off the record, yeah.
which was that was, where I got to exercise a little bit of my sports
Mm-hmm.
knowledge. And so I was actually doing stuff for them in locker rooms at the NHL awards. So, I mean, none
Okay.
of this, exists anymore. So you can't find it on YouTube, but
Right. Yeah.
I was in the probably, I guess, early 2000s doing stuff for them, never
Okay.
thinking that that was a career path for me. Same thing. I also did interviews for the show E-Talk. Sometimes they would like
Mm-hmm.
have a musician interview another musician. So I got to interview Anthony from the Chili Peppers,
Oh
which was
my.
like, he
Does
was
that
my
exist
childhood, like,
somewhere?
and I don't think so.
Oh
And I
man, that would
interviewed
be
Corn
awesome.
too. Like, yeah,
Oh
it
wow.
was like mind blowing. Um, but I guess you're referring to when I transitioned actually into
Yeah.
TV
Yeah.
to my job in Toronto.
Yep.
Yeah, when I decided to move out of music, at least full time, um, I was just lucky enough to get a job at a small station called Sun TV,
Yeah.
and yeah, I learned on the job. I did entertainment interviews. I hosted the show. I wrote. I produced. I did everything.
That's a great way to start. I mean, you got to try every little aspect of the industry. That's pretty cool. And then your biggest, I guess, the big start for you in broadcasting would have been in Calgary with Breakfast Television.
Hmm.
That show is obviously still going strong today. I often tune in actually because they do it live on YouTube, and I just get to tune in and watch Sid Sixero just rip the Leafs for a little while.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah,
crazy.
unfortunately, I mean, so yeah, they still have BT, but
Yeah.
it's totally centralized in Toronto.
Yes. Yeah.
Breakfast Television Calgary, unfortunately, in as its own entity, doesn't exist. But that was also just this incredible stroke of whatever luck, good
Yeah.
fortune, whatever you want to call it. That they were looking for a host at a time where I was ready to try something bigger, and
Yeah.
knew that I could never get a job like that in Toronto. I just wasn't at that
Right.
point in my career. So took the leap and moved to Calgary for 5 years. And honestly, if it wasn't for the hours, I would still be doing it today.
Yeah.
It's so much fun to host a show like that. It
Yeah.
just sucks to wake up at 3
That
a.m.
was my next question. What was it like working those hours? Because everyone always complains about morning radio, morning TV,
Oh,
interview. Oh,
it's so hard. I mean, I know
It's
some
hard.
people
Yeah.
have the stamina, some people have it, but you know, I did everything possible to adjust my life, you know, to make it work. I went to bed no later than 8:30. I didn't
Hmm.
I never drank during the week. I exercised every day. I
Yeah.
found certain things like I couldn't eat carbs in the night because they would make me more tired in the morning. Like I did
Hmm.
everything I could, but it just didn't get easier. It got harder. So
Yeah.
so moving out of breakfast television and into hometown hockey came at the right time because
Yeah.
I was perpetually exhausted.
And how long did it take you to get used to doing live TV? Because that's a whole other thing. I mean, you got to be pretty quick on your feet.
It was doing breakfast television that really helped.
Yeah.
Like I said, I had I had a panic attack on live TV, so
Yeah.
clearly I was
That
battling
happens.
some
Yeah.
mega nerves.
Yeah.
I think I got comfortable after probably into my second year. Um, it was a lot to learn, you know, and I think like not just being comfortable on live TV, but understanding the ins and outs of like how to reference something on the screen or how to throw to break or how to come out of break
Hmm. Yeah.
um and just to I don't know, take my seat, I guess, as sort of like a host. You know, I was
Hmm.
there at my first year. I was new to the city. I
Yeah.
knew that I was also, you know, taking the place of somebody who was beloved. You know, people get
Okay.
really attached to their morning show hosts.
Oh, of
So
course. Yeah.
I was the new girl, and there was a lot of, you know, I'm sure there were like five people who hated me, but you know, it
Yeah.
felt like there was a lot of
They were
critical.
the loud ones. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think, you know, into my second year, it just felt like my show. And um, I began to have fun,
Yeah. Great.
which helps.
And throughout those years on that show, is there something that you look back at, or a moment where you kind of you're like, okay, this is mine now. I got this.
Not a moment, but I knew. So we had a wonderful co-host with me for the first 6 months. His name is Zane Megji, and he works in Vancouver now.
Okay.
And then there was sort of a search for a permanent co-host for, I think it was for kind of like a year almost. I don't know.
Mm.
But I was spending every morning with somebody new.
Yeah.
And there was a time where I just became really adept at like guiding it. And that's
Hmm.
when I knew, you know, it was my show to steer. Not saying like my, but like
Right.
I I I was in the right place.
That's really awesome. And so Tara, after that, my Mount Rushmore in Canada is Gretzky, Gord Downie, Lightfoot, and Ron MacLean.
Hmm.
So the fact that you've had the opportunity to work so many years with Ron, how did that start? And then I have a few more questions about Ron, but how did you get the opportunity, and how did you successfully get that job?
So I had been in touch with Scott Moore, the president of Sportsnet. He
Yeah.
had seen me fill in hosting an event in Calgary, and it was for Canada Sports Hall of Fame. I wasn't supposed to do it, but Hazel
Hmm.
May at the last minute
Yeah.
couldn't do it. And so he came up to me after and he said, "You're really good at this. Do you like
Yeah.
sports?" And I was like, "Yeah, I love sports."
Hmm.
So he and I kept in touch, and you know, we're looking for the right fit. I was already doing some work for Sportsnet in Alberta. I was doing curling and this
Hmm.
and that, little junior hockey here.
Yeah.
Um, so when the press release came out for hometown hockey, I thought, this is, a, I want this.
Yeah.
I really want this. Like this is,
Yeah.
you know, it's traveling and it's hockey, but it's local stories and you know, storytelling really.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I sent a really impassioned plea to Scott Moore, a letter,
Yeah.
and he said, "Well, I think you'd be great, but I'm not the one making this decision. Here's, you
Right.
know, this producer and that producer." So, you know, I was introduced to the people running the show, and then they introduced Ron and me in the weirdest way. We were
Yeah.
just kind of like set up for coffee, and we met each other at Starbucks, and
Hmm.
we thought our bosses were coming, but they weren't. So it was just the two of us. Um, didn't talk about hockey at all, only talked about music.
of course.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And then it took a long time for them to, I think, figure out what the format of the show was going to be. But the first season, I split duties with Jennifer Botterill, and we both kind of
Hmm.
served as reporters. So I was still working at Breakfast Television, but I did, probably 15 weekends on Hometown. And then the next year, they asked me to come on board full time, and then moved into the host seat.
Unbelievable. And what was your background in hockey? I know you grew, like you said, you were born in Montreal and your family was into hockey, but had you played sports or hockey or just a fan?
I played sports, but no, never hockey.
Yeah.
Growing up in Wolfville, Nova Scotia, I don't think I had any. There was no. I didn't see any girls playing hockey. It just what
Not a
didn't
lot.
occur to me at all.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there were, of course, because
Yep.
there always are, but I didn't know them. So I know I loved it. And then, I think it was doing off so many editions of Off the Record. I probably was on Michael's show 25 times.
Yeah.
And then, getting my feet wet, kind of doing those interviews for the NHL awards and stuff like that. But really BT, we did a lot of, I mean, Breakfast Television, those shows, you
Cover everything.
do everything, right? From
Yeah.
politics to
Yeah.
gardening. But we did a lot of sports stuff, a lot of stuff with the Stampeders, a lot of stuff
Yeah.
with the Flames. And I just thought, you know what? I know a lot about hockey. It's a world I feel kind of comfortable in. And
Hmm.
so I'd like to see if I can make a go of that.
That's so amazing. And when how many years did it go for? 6 years or 5 seasons or
It went for 8 years. I mean,
eight? Okay.
with some 8 seasons with some obvious interruptions
Yeah. Okay.
due to COVID. Yeah.
Yeah. So about that show, so it aired on Sunday nights. How much of a grind was it for you guys? Like how often were you traveling and how difficult was that?
It was pretty tough.
Yeah,
I mean, I say that obviously,
in
no,
perspective.
understanding. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it was an enormous privilege to be able to
Yeah.
travel to these communities who were all so welcoming, and, to do this incredible show. And I feel like the things I've been able to, and all of us, have been able to experience, I can't even believe it.
Hmm.
But yeah, I have to say that the travel was pretty relentless. Sometimes most of us were based in Toronto, so we'd have our Ontario shows, and then we'd start getting further flung, and a lot of the shows weren't in major centers, so it's like,
That's right.
and we had a touring festival, so we had to. It's not like we could go to Vancouver and then go to Ontario and then go to Alberta and then go to Halifax. We had a convoy of trucks traveling. So
Right.
we had to do what worked for their schedule, because we were flying in and out, but they were staying on the road.
Yeah.
So, when it was time for the West Coast swing, we'd be flying to Cranbrook and then home. And
Yeah.
then we might do Kelowna and then home. And then we'd go to Salmon Arm and then home. So it's
Yeah.
like when you start getting into stretches like that, where it's like 8 weekends in a row, you're, a long flight and a long drive or whatever it is. And some tough drives too, some really brutal prairie drives in there as
You've
well.
seen some pretty small towns around Canada. What a privilege, though, like you
Yeah.
said. Was there a common link was there something that kept reoccurring in each little town that kind of like gave you a sense of, it's different everywhere, but this Canadian hockey
Mm.
culture is very similar no matter where we go.
Yeah, I think that's it. I mean, everybody had an enormous amount of pride, and I think
Yeah.
that's what made the show work.
Hmm.
Um, an enormous amount of pride for their hometowns, and just that's why, and we took it so seriously, the way that we were conveying, the message of these communities to the rest of the country, because
Yeah.
we were like the ambassadors, and we wanted to do them justice.
Yeah.
So that's the love of hockey, the way that hockey can make a positive impact, that was
Hmm.
universal as well, and the pride. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, I saw all facets of hockey. So, you know I'm outwardly critical sometimes of, certain aspects of hockey culture, but I
Yeah.
also saw the beauty of it, and I know what it can be, and what it
Mhm.
can do, and how it can serve individuals and communities as well.
Well, it's such a great perspective to have. And, I was lucky enough to be taught the same things when I was growing up. And hockey has good and bad sides, like anything in society or any program or club, or it doesn't matter what you're in. There's always going to be issues. And we have given Canadian hockey a lot of grief over the past 10, 15 years. And deservedly so. There's a lot of things that need to change in the hockey community and in the hockey culture. But again, when you can see both sides of it and understand the game and what it really can bring to you, if you understand it in the right ways, I totally
Hmm.
agree with you. Like it's a beautiful game, and there's so much you can learn from it, but you can't get caught up in some of the things that make it nasty. And some of the things that we've seen over the years and that you've talked about, bullying and hazing, and things like dealing with parents, dealing with people in the rink that are just, think their kid's going to be the next superstar in the world. What's a message that you could share with people to kind of sum all of that up?
Oh gosh, I mean, yeah, I just think, I think it's time to look at hockey, or, well, I mean, we have, if you've been following along, just, the sort of safe sport
Hmm.
movements in Canada, I mean, there is a lot of sports with a lot of problems.
Yeah.
And the culture of a lot of sports are broken.
Hmm.
And so I think, I mean, there's not one message other than, we just have to look at the way, we relate to power structures.
Hmm.
We have to look at the way we relate to, like, insularity.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but I mean, obviously there's a lot to work with, but yeah, it seemed, for me, a lot of hockey's problems just um, relate to just a sort of culture of silence, and
Yeah.
um, not so much exposure to the outside world. So
Yeah.
I just think we all just need to have a little bit better awareness, and I think welcoming, if that's like the word I would use, is that it
Yeah.
can be a welcoming space, and we need to be aware that for some people it doesn't feel that way.
Well said, and I agree. A lot has changed. A lot has been changing, and a lot has changed in the past decade. And just to get back quickly to hometown hockey, when you were traveling with Ron, and all of these problems are coming up within the game, was he someone that you could really relate to and talk to deeply about these things? And what kind of a mentor, hockey wise, was he for you?
I mean, it's funny because if you asked him that, he would always say, I wasn't a mentor, we were equals.
Yeah,
But
of
of course I
course.
was like,
Yeah.
um, I think he was, to me, for somebody who's been in the business for as long as he has, and, obviously you have to walk some kind of line.
Hmm.
Um, I think he actually has been quite outwardly honest about his thoughts and
Yeah.
feelings about the game. I think he's been quite balanced. Um, so he was a very good friend and confidant, and when all that stuff went down with the Chicago Blackhawks, and I spoke about it on Hometown Hockey because we had a
Yeah,
Blackhawks game, I couldn't just not
of
say
course.
anything.
Yeah.
Um, I had his full trust and support, and I think, rather than, I mean, obviously I would ask him questions, and, he would teach me just by being him,
Yeah.
and lead by example. But also I knew that he trusted me.
Right.
I knew that he never felt like I needed help or guidance. I mean, I did, but he just, I think that was just a really great example of, like, okay, I'm going to say something.
Yeah.
And, both for him, for my producer, like, nobody asked me for my notes. Nobody asked me to vet, my little spiel.
Hmm.
Um, and that was, I think, the biggest lesson for me, is that, it helped me gain confidence in myself because he had confidence in me.
Yeah, that's really awesome. And it's really happy. I'm really happy to hear that because it's just another feather in Ron's cap for me. Like I look up to him so much and I have since I was a child. I just love his calm demeanor and the way that he's able to articulate things and how much passion he has in everything that he does.
Yeah, I mean, there's, people would say like, what have you learned from Ron? And I said, well, really much of what Ron possesses cannot be taught,
Mhm.
frankly, because
Yeah.
there's nobody who can, even if Ron goes on a crazy tangent, he will
Yeah.
still bring his story back and tie it up in a perfect bow. And you're like,
Yeah.
what the hell just happened here? Like, how did he move from A to B to Z to X to like C and then back to A? Like, how did he
Yeah.
do that? And then, yeah, he's got a like an elephant's memory.
Yeah.
I believe it's a photographic memory. It's uncanny, his
Okay.
ability to
That
remember
makes
names
sense. Yeah.
and timelines, and then he's a masterful broadcaster, just like he's just perfect.
Yeah.
There's no
Well, yeah,
pressure
I can't
singing the
argue
title.
with you. I can't argue with you on that one. Just watching the way he's been able to handle himself for so many years, and seems like he always says the right things. And speaking of that, how does he ever give you guys the heads up on little things that he's going to end his segments in, or his little quirky sayings, or anything like that? Or is it always kind of just,
No,
are you guys just like, oh my God, like where did he
no,
get that?
no. He's got that. Yeah, he's got that stored away. No,
Yeah.
he doesn't tell us. And again, I mean, we all trust him too. So
Mhm. I wanted to ask you about one thing with the hockey culture, and I know you're a big advocate in the Pride community and the LGBTQ plus community, and there's some things going on in the NHL where they're asking teams and to wear Pride jerseys in warm-ups and be a part of welcoming the Pride community into that space, I guess, into that community.
mhm.
And there are people refusing to do it. And it's a pretty contentious thing to talk about because, you think, everyone should have their individual rights to do things, but everyone should also be working towards the greater good. And when you're part of a team and an organization, it's your responsibility to do that. And you've been pretty vocal about it, and I wanted to get your take on it now. How strongly do you feel about, players having the ability to say, no, I'm not going to go out and warm up? Do you think that's right?
No, I don't think it's right. I mean, first of all, the NHL has pulled the plug on that.
I know.
So
That's
there won't,
why, right?
yeah, so there won't be Pride. It's not that there'll still be Pride nights, but they will not have Pride jerseys on the players and warmups or any like specialty jerseys. They've kind of canned all of that, which is sad. So that means
Yeah.
there's no Hockey Fights Cancer jerseys. Like it means,
Auctions. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so I think that was very short-sighted, frankly, of the
Hmm.
league. Um, yeah, I mean, I do think, listen, I think it's sort of top down. I like the way not just because I work for the Sharks. I mean, I like the way the Sharks dealt with James Reimer not wanting to wear a Pride jersey. They
Yeah.
let him state, he state his case. They didn't pull all the players. They didn't pull the whole night, and all the other players wore jerseys. And I think,
Yeah.
okay, I mean, yes, you can't force. I guess you can't force them,
Yeah.
but I do think if you take a stand as an organization, and the NHL could do the same thing if they wanted.
Hmm.
So, like, this is what we stand for. We think this is important. We would really like for you to wear these jerseys.
Yes.
Because, I talked to Brian Burke about it when he was working with Pittsburgh, and I'm not sure what would have happened if somebody in the Penguins organization didn't want to
Right.
wear the jersey.
Mm.
And so if that leadership was kind of all across the league, I don't know, things might be a bit different. And I think another thing is, there are players who really want to show their support
Yes.
and now do
Hmm.
not have that opportunity. But, as far as like there are other ways to do this. I think the Pride Nights are going to be, doubly important now.
Hmm.
It's a really scary time in history. There are really bad things happening. There's
Yeah.
so much homophobia and transphobia. So I think, the organizations themselves need to really put their money where their mouths are in terms of internal education, and showing up, in
Yeah.
whichever ways they can. And I'm proud to say that yesterday I was with the San Jose Sharks organization marching in the Silicon Valley Pride Parade. And it was great.
Awesome. I saw your pictures. Yeah, and it's really cool that you're so involved in that, because it's so needed. And the way I look at it as well is, you don't have to agree with transgenderism or homophobia or being gay. You don't have to agree with that to wear that pride jersey at the start of your hockey game. And to me, it's like just showing people that they're welcome inside that space, inside that community. It's not about, you could be a stock, like you could be the hardcore Christian who thinks that it's wrong to be gay, but you should still be able to welcome those people into your community and see their side. So
Exactly. It's
it's
just
kind of
saying, as
sad.
Brian
And
Burke said, yeah, it's really sad. It's just saying all are welcome here. And we want you to feel safe and feel good. That's it.
yes, exactly. And yeah, I hope it continues. And it seems like the NHL quick band-aid solution there to try and just get rid of everything so that they don't have to deal with it. It's kind of lame. So I hope that
Yeah.
changes, and I hope people like you keep fighting for that.
I will. I can't keep my mouth shut. That's just how it goes.
Well, we're all happy for that, Tara. And so lastly, you started working with the San Jose Sharks. How exciting has that been? You're creating content, you're doing podcasts, you're on the air. What's your favorite part of it? How's the whole experience been so far?
I mean, the whole thing is honestly a trip. And now I've been living here for a year. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think I ever saw myself living permanently in the United States. I had a few different opportunities through the
Hmm.
course of my careers, um, and didn't make the move. But as it turns out, I fell in love with somebody living here, and
Hmm.
um, was lucky enough to stumble on the only hockey jobs down here.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I mean, what's fun about it is I'm doing everything.
Yeah.
So, when it comes to the broadcast side, I'm doing some rink side and I'm doing some hosting, which is fun. It's fun to just mix it up.
Yeah.
And then for the Sharks themselves, various features and podcasts. And so, I'm really learning about this, these fans, right? This is
Hmm.
not, it's a totally different demographic
Yeah.
than most Canadian cities. Um, Totally different stories down here. So I'm just really enjoying, just kind of finding my way here.
Yeah. And being in San Jose, like you said, I mean, 20 years ago, there wasn't a whole lot of love for hockey in Southern California. But what is it like there now? What is the buzz around the city and around hockey in general?
Well, I mean, to be frank, the team itself is not in the greatest place. I don't know if
Yes.
I'm not sure the GM Mike Greer would call it a rebuild, but it's a something.
Yeah.
Um, so there are going to be a lot of new faces this year. Eric Carlson finally got traded to Pittsburgh,
Yeah.
so there it's really. I think this is a team this year that Mike Greer in his second year is now able to start assembling.
Yeah.
I have no idea. Like this team could be remarkably, refreshing, or it could be terrible.
Yeah.
I don't know. I have no idea. So it's a little tough in a market that has actually been quite spoiled in terms of their team's successes. There was a stretch where they just didn't miss the playoffs.
Yeah.
So it's a good time to also start, looking at ways to build the game and grow the game. And I think the Sharks do that really well. There's lots of great programs and lots of places to skate. And
Yeah.
um, but I'll tell you, when that building goes, it goes. It's a really,
Yeah.
really fun place to be.
That's awesome. That's exciting to hear too, because the sport's grown so much. And just to speak on that for a second, there's so many people, hockey traditionalists, who were angry about the fact that Las Vegas is in the Stanley Cup final and winning Stanley Cups. I personally think it's amazing for the sport, and it shows how much parity there is in the NHL. And you look at, like, there's 16 Canadians on that Las Vegas roster. What are your thoughts on that and the growth of hockey and where it's headed?
I feel the same. I mean, I think, we want to keep the original six? Like, what good is
Yeah.
that doing?
Yeah.
So no, I think it's fantastic. Hockey in the desert, you want to see those teams be successful. Um, and I wish it would grow more, frankly. I
Yeah.
wish, like, I think there are other markets that could um, sustain teams, let alone Quebec, which is, I don't know why they don't have a team again.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, no, I think that their story is so incredible to be an expansion team to Stanley Cup champions in that short period of time, and
Yeah.
the game's grown internationally, and really, they need to they needed that, I think, but
Yeah,
that's just
I
my thought.
agree. And the sport is, I can confirm that the sport is growing really quickly internationally, especially over here in Asia. We've got so many people doing great things here to help build the game. Tara, I could talk hockey with you all day. But I do, before we get to the end of the show here, I do want to thank Billy MacLellan for helping us connect. Billy's been on the podcast. He was my first actor on the podcast, who played in the movie The Goalie, the story of Terry Sawchuk. So thank you, Billy, for helping this happen. And Tara, I usually end every episode with what I call my overtime questions. It's going to be some 10 rapid fire questions that I ask everybody, and then one final question for you at the end, especially.
Sounds good.
So, and as just before we get to them, I will say my thank you now. You are an incredible inspiration to so many people, and I want to thank you for taking the time to talk to me, because it means a lot.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. This has been a really enjoyable conversation for me. So thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so here's your one-timers, Tara. You ready to go?
Yeah.
All right, Habs or Leafs?
I have to say Habs.
Lemieux or Gretzky?
Oh, Gretzky.
Probert or Domi?
Ooh, Probert.
Waugh or Brodeur?
Raw.
Ooh. Or Lidstrom?
Lidstrom. No explanation.
Claude Lemieux or Brad Marchand?
Oh, Brad Marchand. I'm from Nova Scotia.
There, I knew you'd get that one. Yzerman or Messier?
SCI.
Bowman or Burns?
Burns.
Ron or Don?
Oh, that's hilarious. I gotta go with
Yeah.
Ron.
I knew that would be easy for you. Shootout or no shootout?
Ooh, shootout.
Okay. And finally, just for you,
Longer,
Tara.
more
Okay.
overtime. More overtime.
Longer
Can I
overtime.
add that?
Yes,
Yeah.
you can. You could have that. Final question for you. If you could be the front woman of any band from any era, from any time, what band would it be and why?
Oh gosh, I have a few different answers for that.
Well, you have time.
But do I? Okay.
Yeah.
If I could be the front woman, let's go let's go two. I mean,
Okay.
really, I love singing Led Zeppelin more than anything. But I mean, it's ridiculous because Robert Plant is Robert Plant.
Yeah.
So, but there's a great Zeppelin, all-female Zeppelin cover band from around here called Zepparella.
Okay.
So if they ever need a fill-in, I would like to do that.
Yeah.
But I feel like this answer will probably take you by surprise. But if I could sing in a band that had like a similar repertoire to Queens of the Stone Age, I'd be happy.
Oh wow, you are a rock goddess, aren't you?
I'm a rocker. I like guitars. I like guitars.
Awesome. Tara, thanks again for all the time you've given me today and coming on the show. I wish you the best of luck, you and Dan, and you got a special birthday coming up, so I want to wish you a very happy birthday.
Oh,
a little
I'm
early.
freaked out. Yeah,
no, don't be. You're crushing it. Thanks again, and yeah, have a great season, and we'll be watching.
And this was awesome. So really, thank you.
All right, that was Across the Pond, and that's a wrap.
Thank you to our amazing sponsors, the China Hockey Group, Wheel Hub Asia, AccessoryHouseGlobal.com, Yardley Brothers Beer, and of course, Sunset Studio. Check us out on Facebook and Instagram at Across the Pond HK. Email us, send in your comments and questions to the show at any time at acrossthepondhk@gmail.com.